Is still the conversation here on Lagos Television. Unfortunately, we will not be able to connect with our guest via Zoom this morning. We'll be taking this interview via the telephone. Dr. Ayo Teriba is joining the conversation this morning. He's an economist and CEO, Economic Associate. Thank you, Dr. Ayo Teriba, for joining the conversation this morning.
Thank you very much.
Right. So, thank you. Right. So at the beginning, we did say that Mr. President presented the budget last Friday, a budget of over 58 trillion naira. In your assessment, looking at the presentation of the budget, what could you make out of the president's presentation to the National Assembly if you were to give an overview of that presentation process?
Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. The compliments of the team. Yeah, the president did propose the budget for 2026 before the National Assembly on Friday. And one should commend the president for his candor, for his honesty in admitting that the capital projects budgeted for 2024 and 2025 have been very poorly funded, and described the experience that we have had with the budget so far as running 3 budgets on one revenue stream, on a single revenue stream, and he pledged to put an end to that anomaly by proposing that all capital project areas will be fully funded by 31st March. And the budget that is now proposed for 2026 will be implemented from 1st April.
Okay.
I guess it means that the capital budget for 2026, will now be funded from 1st April.
Right.
While efforts will be made between 1st January and 31st March to clear the capital spending arrears carried over from 2024 and 2025.
Right, Dr. Teriba, let me quickly break into your thoughts. From what you've just analyzed now and looking at the body language of Mr. President and him also saying going forward there will be budget discipline, do you think that this is the right step in the right direction now that, of course, the budget is expected to take effect from the 1st of April 2026? Is this what discipline in budgeting is all about?
Yeah, discipline is not by talking. You are not going to be able to judge discipline by what the president says.
Okay.
Before the National Assembly, when he makes proposal. Discipline is going to be assessed after the fact. When we get to 31st March 2026, that's when we know if there has been budget discipline or not.
Okay.
Yes. So the point for me is, okay, let's give the president the benefit of this house. Let's commend him, because this is the first time, in 2.5 years that he is admitting that there is a problem.
Right.
With the federal budget. And the coordinating minister before him admitted that last year they projected they expected to get 40 trillion revenue. They got only 10 trillion.
Right.
Similarly, there is expected that the coordinating minister will come out and admit that the revenue performance is poor. 25% revenue performance in 2025. Well, was not the first time. It had been so in 2024. It was how they met it. It had been so under President Buhari.
Right.
That revenue projections will be made and not met.
Okay.
And instead of to admit it, you just make bigger projection for next year. So question, the 34 trillion that they have projected for 2026, are they going to meet it?
Okay.
And I would have loved the president to speak more to how he plans to meet that revenue target and what he wants to do differently from what President Buhari did in 8 years that failed, from what he has done in 2.5 years that has failed. So what are we doing differently in 2026?
Right.
Notably, are we going to consider raising equity instead of debt?
Right.
Are we going to consider letting investors come and fund those capital budget items where possible through FDI, through domestic direct investment, or through PPP?
Right.
Then we know that we are making progress.
Okay.
To tell us that you will do it in 3 months, what we have not been able to do in 2 years, we don't want to do it in 3 months, but we still want to borrow to do it.
Right.
I have a problem.
You have a problem with that.
Yes.
Okay, so if I'm to let me come in here. So part of what the president also said on Friday, and I quote, is that talking about revenue performance, it said the administration expects improved revenue performance through the new National Tax Act and the ongoing reforms in the oil and gas sector. Sector reforms designed not merely to raise revenue, but to drive transparency, efficiency, fairness, and long-term value in our fiscal architecture. Does this in any way address your worry where you said earlier that you would have loved to hear what this administration will be doing differently in 2026? So now that the president said that looking at improving revenue performance through the new tax laws and other reforms, especially in the oil and gas sector, does this have any meaning to the question or the worry you raised earlier?
We have been, the tax committee has been at work for 2.5 years. They have not had much time to the conference. So they've been a cost center, not a revenue center.
Okay.
2026 is the year before a general election.
Right.
Nobody should expect that you can implement new taxes in the year before election. So is it the new taxes you are going to use to fund the accumulated capital projects of 2 years, 2024 and 2025, in 3 months? So if you introduce tax laws in January, when are you going to get the tax revenue? Company income tax gives them to the middle of the next year before they will pay the taxes. If you introduce new company called personal income tax, you can get that monthly. But federal government does not collect personal income taxes, it is the states that collect it. So the only tax that the government collects, the federal government collects, is company income taxes. So if you introduce new tax in January, they will end the assets. Before you start seeing the assessment, after election, let's do the assessment.
Okay.
And this is not the first time we are talking about oil sector reform. 10 trillion naira federal government of Nigeria, when they expected 40 trillion, they should tell us how much that trillion is oil revenue.
Right. So,
it's surprised that most of it is not even oil revenue. Oil has disappointed us enough. Whether price of oil or output of oil. Let's be realistic.
So now,
except we turn to assets, we should not be talking about taxes.
okay.
We should be talking about generating revenue from Nigeria's assets. We are playing AFCON in Morocco now. Morocco is deploying 9 stadiums. We, our national stadium here, we can't earn a penny from it. We have federal secretary, we can't earn a penny from it. We are talking of taxing people.
Okay.
When you can people at work and within a month you can generate revenue from some of the assets that we own.
Right.
And that's why I'm saying do domestic direct investment. Let investors come and invest in some of these assets.
Right.
And then take our system companies to the stock market for increased transparency, for increased accountability. Then they will contribute money to the national coffers.
Right.
So what the things that are not work, it's not going to work in 3 months just because the president says so.
Okay, so Dr. Tariba, are you saying, or what would be your view now about that budget from what you've raised so far? Is this budget realistic?
The deficit of 4 trillion should be funded by raising equity,
okay,
by raising investment, not by borrowing.
right.
And when you raise equity, you are raising equity into assets. It could be companies, corporate assets that we own. It could be real estate, it could be infrastructure. Then those assets generate revenue. Then you can raise 50 trillion for federal government and raise 100 trillion for federal government revenue. But outside of equity and assets, I am not confident that we are going to change the revenue situation.
Okay.
I am not confident that those capital items should be funded.
Right. So,
it's not there, it's my take.
okay, let's look at the 4 areas that the president actually looked at in this budget. He talked about the fact that this particular budget, of course, he talked about security and defense, allocating 5.41 trillion naira for defense and security, 3.56 trillion naira for infrastructure, 2 trillion naira for education, and 2.48 trillion naira for health. Let's start from defense and security with 5.1 trillion naira. What's your take on this, especially at this moment where Nigeria is battling with issues around insecurity, kidnapping, and all sorts? Are you of the opinion that this amount of money that has been earmarked to this sector is one that will work?
Bimbo, let's not build castles in the air.
Okay.
The confirmed capacity of the federal government of Nigeria to raise revenue is 10 trillion. In 2024, it was 9.4 trillion. And they were able to borrow an additional 15 trillion. So in both years, they spent 24 point something trillion. You know, they spent less than 25 trillion in each of 2024 and 2025 so far. That will be for payment of salaries, overheads, and interest payments. For 2024, it didn't seem that they were able to fund any of the capital projects at all. So why are you talking about security, infrastructure, education, and health? When there is no money to fund the ones that were allocated for 2025, they are proposing to move 70% of it to 2026. And that funding, 30% of the funding is sitting there. So we'll be struggling to do 2024. We haven't paid 2024 contractors. So please, when you want to build those castles in the air, count me out.
Right.
You know, when you want to talk about what we have revenue to do, count me in.
Okay.
So we will be busy continuing to pay salaries and interest. Once we finish paying those two, we will cover with overheads. Okay?
Right.
So let's take a patient proposal on the table.
Okay. All right, Dr. Teriba, I don't know. Maybe, perhaps, let me ask this question. Let me frame it this way. Having listened to that budget or watching that budget presentation last week Friday, what cut it out for you? What did Mr. President say in that budget that is optimistic, or that you can hold, you know, as a Nigerian, has been optimistic? Because most of the things that the president has, you know, held on dear to his heart, you've punctured this morning. So for you, what stood out for you in that budget, or was it just mere words read out by Mr. President?
What stood out for me, I said from the beginning, is that the president is candid enough to admit that there is a problem with the federal budget. And that the Honorable Minister too is honest enough to admit that only 25% of the revenue projected was realized. I commend that. I commend that for that. So they told us there is a problem. Let's not beat ourselves about how to solve the problem.
Okay.
So we moved away from this telling us that because of the reform of foreign exchange there will be more revenue, because of removal of subsidy there will be more revenue. We know that in spite of the reform of foreign exchange and in spite of the removal of subsidy. We still know that we will. They are not telling us that they're saying that let's not wait.
Okay.
And unless we're talking about lifting assets that and attracting equity into them, we will not solve it. That is first of March. Our president will still be admitting that they are failed to fund those projects.
Problems.
And at the 10th December will come, and we will still not have funded them. Yes. So you see countries that are making progress, whether it's Saudi Arabia or Brazil or India, they sound very objective about the need for equity investment. Talking about that.
Right.
That is not a sustainable way of any country. Equity is. And I feel that equity is not functioning what the president. I'm not functioning anything. It's not what the president promised. He said he would have carried on direct investment.
Right.
And for the direct investment, it's not equity. Postpone money that pledge of 15 billion in foreign direct investment. None of that. So tell us in this budget, what sector you want to attract foreign direct investment into? Bidding for LNG, like we did into the GSM sector. And then we will make progress. That's my view.
Right. So
it may not be a popular view. It may not be a popular view, but I would like to remember of saying this.
I'm glad you mentioned issue of foreign direct investments, which Mr. President also alluded to during that presentation, and as to why security and defense took the lion's share. If Nigeria is not safe, if Nigeria is not secure, how then can investors want to come into Nigeria to stake their investments?
Nigeria came into LNG and the GSM investment into Nigeria under General Basoyo, because they offered the investors the opportunity, not because Nigeria was more secure or the environment was more stable. President Tinubu to offer opportunities for foreign investors and domestic investors to come and fund capital projects. We shouldn't be saying we want to go and borrow to award contracts. We should liberalize those sectors. Let equity investors come in those sectors. Equity investors don't run away from risks. They take risks.
Right.
And Nigeria is not the only country in the world with the problem of insecurity. Foreign investment arrive in countries that offer investors the opportunity. That's my point.
Right. So let me quickly go back to what you raised earlier, and I know that you were quite emphatic on issues around assets and equity, and like I read out what Mr. President said as to how the country intends to shore up its revenue. Now the question here is, looking at the vulnerability of the 2026 budget estimate, how then do we begin to guide and guard the country and the estimate from global shocks, especially since we largely still depend on global oil crude, and that still forms part of what we base our budget on year in, year out?
And how much income from he has made progress everywhere else in the economy. He has raised foreign net reserves from 4 billion to 39 billion in 2 years. He didn't do it with money. He did it in capital inflows. So, actually, he should make efforts to complement that with foreign direct investment. And then capital projects will be funded for more metrics. He has stabilized the economy, he has brought inflation down, he has revived growth. Growth is accelerating. He It did them in spite of disappointment from oil, whether from oil price or from oil production. It did that because of increased remittance. It did it because of increased inflow of foreign exchange. That is to capitalize more on the fact that foreign exchange will arrive if we take opportunities for investors to invest, like we did in GSM, telephony, and like we did in LNG, and like we did in the financial sector. So liberalize the rail, liberalize the road projects that we are seeing, let investors fund them as equity, and liberalize the transmission network, let investors fund them. Let investors fund the airport terminals.
All right.
Let investors take stake in our companies.
Okay.
And then Nigeria will.
All right, Dr. Teriba, before we allow you go this morning, what's in this budget for the average Nigerian, especially the man on the streets? Well,
the improvements, the achievements that the president has made in 2.5 years, including stabilizing the exchange rate. We have a naira that has appreciated in 2025. We have inflation that has dropped from 34% in November 2024 to 14% in November 2025. These are tangible improvements in the lives of every Nigerian.
Okay.
Now we have the GDP now going. If we could fund capital projects, if all those priorities that the president announced for security, for infrastructure, for education and health could actually be funded, every Nigeria will be better. So I am concerned that we should try and get the president to do the things that will ensure that those projects are funded.
Okay.
So that they will actually be, reality, not just castles in the air.
All right, we'll have to leave this conversation here this morning. Thank you so much, Dr. Ayo Teriba, economist and CEO, Economic Associates, for speaking with us on the program. We appreciate your thoughts.
Thank you very much.
Of course, we've been speaking with Dr. Ayo Teriba, and of course he's weighed in on the conversation this morning and giving us his own perspective of what the budget is all about, and again what Mr. President and his team should consolidate on at ensuring that indeed the projections are a reality and every Nigerian will benefit from the projected estimate into 2026. Thank you for staying tuned. It's still the conversation. We'll take a break. When we return, Joy and Adibimpe will be here with their Lagos conversation.